Hi guys, it's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and today is December 15th, 2016, and I just came back from seeing Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Right there, got this fancy poster. I saw it in IMAX 3D, and so I'm just going to share some of my impressions, my reaction, if you will, to the movie. Obviously, this is going to be chock-a-block full of spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, first of all, go see it. Uh, Second of all, stop watching because, yeah, I'm going to talk about all kinds of stuff, uh, which will ruin the surprise for you, totally spoil the movie. So, yes, that is your warning. This is full of spoilers. If you don't want any spoilers, you should probably stop watching now. That being said, for the first little part, I'm going to try and stay a little less heavy on the spoilers. For the first few minutes, I'm going to talk in sort of generalities, just about how much I liked or disliked or whatever aspects of the movie, in more broad terms. And then after that, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty. So, if you don't mind mild spoilers, you can stick around for a little bit, but I will let you know. I'll give you a big fat warning again before I dive into more of the details. But everything from here on out is, some people might consider spoilers anyway, so do bear that in mind. This isn't going to be super organized because, like I said, I just saw the movie. I've seen it once. I have some impressions, put a few things on my phone here, but yeah, this is going to mostly be kind of a ramble just as things come to mind. And also, as you can probably tell, this is a little bit more dynamic, a little bit louder. I'm attempting to be soft-spoken, but I am quite excited about this film. So it's going to be a little faster, maybe a little louder than what you're used to coming from me. Maybe you'll find it relaxing, maybe not, but this is something that some people asked for, indicated they would be interested in, and like I said, I'm pretty pumped right now, so I just want to talk about it. Right off the bat, it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. I went in with some expectations, or hopes anyway, but I had in my head an idea of the kind of movie that I thought it would be, and it turned out to be exactly that. So it really satisfied what I was looking for, and I'll specify what I mean by that a little bit more in a bit. But I was incredibly impressed. In a phrase, they did it. They made the movie that I thought it needed to be, that it should be, and it was totally Star Wars, but recognizably Star Wars, but also its own thing in a way. It was definitely darker in tone. It was grittier. It was a bit more brutal, a bit more violent. It was funny at parts. It was tragic at parts. The characters were likable, well acted, occasionally a little bit one note, but they were good, well written, I think, for their purpose. And it was a satisfying story, a story that you kind of know how it's going to end, because obviously it's a prequel to the very first Star Wars film, so you have some idea of where things are going to end up, and that is exactly how it pans out. But there are some surprises along the way, but overall it was excellent, satisfying, I want to say, for me, surprisingly good film. It was genuinely excellent. And that's not to say it wasn't without its faults. There were some aspects of it that, I'm not so crazy about, but most of them are pretty nitpicky. And really, I don't have that many bad things to say about the movie in general. That's all detail stuff that we'll get into a moment. But overall, two thumbs, put down my phone, two thumbs, way up. Absolutely enjoyed it, every moment of it, and I'm going to go watch it again and probably again after that. Um, it's beautiful too. I don't think I mentioned that, but the cinematography um, and the worlds, places that they've created and built for this film are just lovely. Maybe one of the prettiest Star Wars films, from a visual perspective. Some real cool effects, especially later on when the action heats up. Some really intense action sequences that look really good, in my opinion. So, okay, well, that was a mouthful, but that's my general feeling of the film. So, at this point, if you're still watching and you haven't seen it yet, uh, I implore you to stop watching. Don't watch my video. Go see it, and then come back, and then watch this, and then you can tell me if you agree or you disagree. And I'd like to get lots of lively discussion down in the comments section as well. So that is encouraged. But from here on out, we're going to enter more serious spoiler territory. I'm going to be talking about specific characters and events in the film. So you have been warned. Turn back if you have not seen it. I'll give you a moment. Okay. Are they gone? It's just us? Just us who've seen it? Good. Or just those of you who really don't care about spoilers. That's fine too, I guess. If you're really, really sure that you just don't care, then you can hang with us too. That's fine. So I'm not going to go over in detail all the plot points of the movie because you've seen it. You know what happens. But I guess we might as well start at the beginning in terms of my impressions. I think the movie's pretty gripping right from the start. That opening scene with, young Jyn Erso and Mads Mikkelsen, her father, hiding from the Empire on this remote planet, and then Director Krennic coming down, played by Ben Mendelsohn, who is fantastic, by the way. He's a really good Imperial villain. He channels just the right amount of haughty superiority, but anger and a little bit of kind of impotent rage as well. Like he struggles a bit in the film. He's sort of, as you know, he plays second fiddle to Tarkin, right? So Tarkin's always trying to kind of find ways to take credit for what Director Krennic is up to with the Death Star, but then Krennic eventually stands up to Darth Vader in that scene when he checks out Vader's palace or whatever you want to call it, which was a little bit ridiculous. But anyway, that opening sequence was pretty good. I thought pretty tense, and it really establishes well why Jyn Erso feels the way she does about the Empire and whatever. I don't know a lot about her character, what happens to her in between that opening scene and then when we flash forward in the movie to her as an adult. There's probably some books or something out there that might fill that in. I don't really know. But at least as she's presented in the movie, I think her character is very consistent. I also think that she's a good, strong female lead. She certainly holds her own. She does some, pretty badass stuff. She's a little bit more one note than some of the other characters, even in the movie, like Cassian Andor, which is a fantastic Star Wars name, by the way, just awesome. He's the intelligence officer with the rebels, and he at first I wasn't super crazy about his character or the way he was acted. I thought he was a little bit flat, just maybe the acting or the delivery or something was a bit flat, but he grew on me for sure as a character. And you find out over the course of the film that he's a little more complex than he might appear to be. He's not the Han Solo-ish rogue or something that you might expect. He's a bit darker. He's a bit more reserved. He's clearly done some terrible things in his past that he's not proud of. And that's sort of a theme that runs throughout the film, actually, and I really appreciate that, is that they take the rebels, who in the original films are these sort of altruistic, goody two-shoes types, and this movie casts them quite differently. It shows them to be flawed in a lot of ways, not squeaky clean. Some of them are kind of brutal. They're terrorists, basically, right? And that, everyone knew that in the previous films, but they never really explored that. Whereas here, you have the rebels, and then you have Forrest Whitaker's group. What's his character's name? Saw something. Saw Gerrera. He's a cool character in his own right, although he doesn't get nearly as much screen time as I might have liked. It would have been cool to develop him even a little bit further. But he gets killed off kind of early-ish in the film, I guess, as you know. But anyway, his group of rebels are even more extreme, right? There are these, they call them extremists in the movie, and they're quite violent, and the Alliance tries to sort of distance themselves from these extreme rebels, but ultimately has to go back to them to try and connect over these Death Star plans and all that stuff, and that plays out, that. So, where was I going with that? I guess I like the way the Rebel Alliance and the rebels in general are portrayed in this movie, as they're not these squeaky clean, altruistic good guys. They are shades of gray. Some of them are kind of bad. And certainly there's a lot of them who are the ends justify the means, So I thought that was a really neat or really good way to handle the rebels and to portray them, make them a little more interesting. So Cassian, cool character, has a satisfying, I don't want to say an arc, like he doesn't change that much through the film, but what he does is satisfying, and the way he ends is satisfying, and all that sort of stuff. So that was cool. Gosh, where to jump to next here? Like I said, it is a darker, grittier, just more mature take on Star Wars as a whole, and I'm glad that they're doing these standalone films, because it gives them the feeling, I think, the producers or the powers that be who oversee the series, it lets them experiment in ways that they wouldn't with the core trilogy or the core series. And it allows them to take this in a darker direction than they would dare to do with, say, Episode 8, I think. Anyway, maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe 8 will be quite dark and gritty, but it's my feeling that they have more leeway in these standalone films, because they're one-offs, right? And all the characters die in the end anyway, right? So if it doesn't work out, oh well. It's still going to make them $1 billion. So I think that's pretty cool. It gives them some creative license that they might feel a bit more restricted about in the main series. The flip side of that is that this movie had some genuinely touching moments. One of my, actually, a really favorite moment of mine was a couple, but when Jyn Erso is watching the hologram of her father, telling her, and this is presumably after something like 15 years or something since she's seen her dad, because he got swept away or taken off by the Imperials again to help them continue to build the Death Star. And he's saying, "I love you. I think about you every day. I've been basically forced to design the super weapon, but I've built in this flaw." And Felicity Jones' delivery is, in watching that hologram, is just touching and kind of heartbreaking, but heartwarming at the same time. Like, she really carries that scene amazingly well. There's a couple of points throughout the movie where she really conveys a depth of emotion that you don't see in the Star Wars films, really, or we haven't to this point, or at least not commonly. Episode 7 had some moments for sure, but anyway, I thought that was a really cool moment. So the movie does have its sensitive, quiet moments, and also some really funny moments. Like there's some genuinely funny stuff. Most of the humor comes courtesy of the new robot sidekick, the droid companion, whose name is escaping me. It is K2SO, the reprogrammed Imperial droid, who's now working with the Alliance, played by the fantastic Alan Tudyk. And he does an excellent job of that character. There's some really awesome moments and one-liners and that sort of stuff. Well, not even one-liners, just really well-delivered lines. Like, there's one point after they've been through a little bit together, you know, but Jin and the robot get off to a bit of a rough start. So K2SO get off to kind of a rough start. And there's a point where K2SO is like, just so you know, Jin, like, I'm always here for you. And then he's like, because Cassian says I have to be. And just that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of moments that were really good that way. And most of them really worked out. There weren't a whole lot of comedic moments that fell flat, in my opinion. I think they mostly all hit their mark, which is impressive for a Star Wars movie. Just good and well written moments in general. And K2SO is a good character. He has a good, you know, he does have a good arc, you know, warming up to Jin and in the end sacrificing himself so that Jin and Cassian can complete their mission, get those Death Star plans. So that was cool. Gosh, what else do I want to say here? Overall, there's a handful of other characters. There's the fellow played by Donnie Yen, the blind Force martial artist. He's not a Jedi, but he believes deeply in the Force, and he kicks some serious ass. I can't remember what his character's name is off the top of my head, but he's a bit one note, you know. You kind of know who he is, the blind martial arts master, but he fills that role well, and he does kick some serious ass a couple times, and I like him. And he ends up just sort of well, not out of the blue, but he just kind of ends up with the heroes, with the rebels. Like, I don't think there's ever really a discussion of like, hey, you want to join us? He's just kind of, events sweep him up, and there he is with them. And he's very much a will of the Force kind of guy, so I guess he just figures that's where he's supposed to be. And no one seems to argue, so there he is. And his sidekick, the guy with the big gun, he's kind of gruff. He doesn't talk much. I've also forgotten his name. But those guys have a pretty cool moment in the end on Scarif, where Donnie Yen's character has to go flip that switch, which is a little contrived, but he flips that switch to turn on the communications connection relay or something that allows the pilot guy back in the ship to transmit up to the rebel fleet to let them know that they have to bring the shield down so that Jin and Cassian can send the plans, transmit the plans up. And that whole scenario is a little contrived, but it works, you know. I think that was fine. But anyway, that moment where he goes out and he's trusting in the Force and he's getting shot at, but everything's missing him, that was awesome. And then where his buddy guy with the gun, after Donnie Yen's character dies, his buddy guy with the gun, you know, finally comes around and he trusts in the Force too, and he goes and he shoots a bunch of shadow troopers or whatever those new black stormtroopers are, in the black armor, death troopers maybe, I can't remember. Anyway, those guys, they're just kind of there throughout, but they're cool. I have no problem with them. They are a little bit one note, but they each do have their own little story arc where you know, Donnie Yen's character fulfills his purpose. Basically, he trusts in the Force, he fulfills his purpose, and he's at peace with that in the end. And then his sidekick guy, his buddy, comes around and also trusts in the Force at the end and kicks some serious ass. So that's all really cool. Yeah, so I think overall the cast of characters is really strong. They're all acted quite well. They're all quite likable. They all have their own, arcs to some degree or another where their characters develop, but some of them are a little bit one-dimensional. I can forgive that. They're pretty good. Also, they're all dead right at the end of the movie, so maybe they didn't want to invest so much in building these characters. They don't have a whole lot of time to build them. Yeah, the movie, like I said, Shades of Grey portrays the rebels really interestingly. I like that. The Imperials, obviously, still bad guys. They're fascists and they're just evil as they are. Um, but uh, but Jin's father, Galen Erso, he is sort of an interesting character in that he's the designer of the Death Star. You'd think he'd be a pretty bad dude, but it turns out he's not such a bad dude, and he built in that weakness specifically. I mentioned it earlier, but the cinematography is just lovely. There are some absolutely stunning shots that sent shivers up my spine. They were just so beautiful. And I think that is, yeah, it's certainly one of the strongest Star Wars movies, if not the strongest, from that perspective. I just love watching it. It's just a treat for the eyeballs. And for instance, some of the set design and the world building that goes on, especially throughout the beginning part of the film with, when they're in the city of Jeddah, and, you kind of get your Mos Eisley moments where you're just walking, the characters walking through this exotic place. I think they did a fantastic job of building the world in those scenes and really teasing at all kinds of cool stuff that they leave completely unanswered, but I thought was really neat. Like the whole thing with the Kyber crystals being like I think they implied they were fueling the Death Star's laser, which is a little weird, but okay, super laser. But they were being harvested by the Imperials from this moon, which is where there had clearly been Jedi in ancient times, because you see these massive scattered statues in the desert, fallen and crumbled and covered by the sands. And there's talk about there's a temple of these Kyber crystals, and the Kyber crystals were used by the Jedi and their lightsabers, and all this stuff is touched on, but it's never really, nothing really much comes of it. But they just do this fantastic job of doing this universe building. Now that they've turfed out all the extended universe stuff, they're starting to reestablish a lot of these things, borrowing bits and pieces from the extended universe as it was. And I think that's pretty cool. They do a great job of teasing that stuff, and I want to know more about Jeddah, about what that planet was, and what the Jedi did there, and the history of the place. So I think that's a good sign. And the fact that this character, Donnie Yen's character, was a protector of the Kyber temple or whatever. Like, what does that mean? What was he doing? All super cool stuff. Really well done. So all the references and tie-ins to the original trilogy, especially the first movie, they start, appearing, and by the end of the movie, they're coming hot and heavy. You got, like, in the battle at the end, like, all the pilots were the same pilots, excuse me, the same pilots that attacked the Death Star. Like, a lot of them were supposed to be the same guys. That makes total sense. A lot of the things they say, a lot of the shots are very much like the attack on the Death Star 1. When the Death Star gunners are firing the super laser shot for shot, there's a lot of replication, really, of what you see in the first Star Wars film, A New Hope. Some people might think that was a little heavy-handed with the references. It's not an homage or anything, really. It is like they're directly trying to be like the first movie. I think that's fine. I think that's great, even. I think it's appropriate because this happens so close to that film. And I love it. The Star Wars fanboy in me just loves that stuff. I ate it up. there were a couple moments that were like, well, did that really need to be there? Maybe not. Like, okay, R2D2 and C3PO make a cameo appearance very briefly. Did that need to be there? Probably not. Am I mad about it? No. I think that's totally fine. Um, C3PO has one line or whatever. That's great. I don't care. Sure. Um, and then the more serious cameos, you have your Darth Vader, you have your Tarkin, and then right at the very end, you have Princess Leia. Um, so let's talk about that stuff, because that kind of comes around to some of what I thought was maybe the weaker parts of the film. Grand Moff Tarkin, really cool that they have him in there. Really cool that they didn't try and like film around his face and like never show it or something. They just went straight in there. They made a digital model of that of Peter Cushing, and he acts. He's in a lot of scenes. I don't think they quite nailed it. It's pretty good, it's pretty good, but he lives in that uncanny valley. You can tell it's a digital model. It's not a real actor. It's getting really close, but it definitely was just something about it wasn't quite right. And I think that actually sort of ended up detracting from those scenes a little bit, unfortunately. But I'm not really going to hold that against the movie too much, because there's little they could have done. If they had tried to just not show his face conveniently, it would have been too contrived, too obvious. And whoever was voice acting the character did an excellent job. I think they sounded just like Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin. Yeah, it was just the face. They just didn't quite nail it. But so that would be maybe one of the nitpicks that I have about the film. Darth Vader. Let's talk about Vader. We have this scene where Krennic goes to, I guess it's Mustafar, I'm not quite sure, lava planet, generic lava planet in Star Wars universe. And Darth Vader's got like a frickin' like gothic cathedral that he lives in there. I thought that was a little bit much. He's an evil dude, yes, and sure, he's dark and he's Vader, but I thought that was just kind of over the top. And his giant like lava waterfall, I don't know, and maybe some people will eat that up, but I thought that was a little bit lame. But that scene where he comes out of the back to tank, and then the door opens and there he is and he's talking to Krennic, I thought that was all pretty good. And he chokes Krennic right at the end there, which was great. And then he has this one-liner where he's like, what is it? He's choking Krennic, and he turns halfway back and he says, "Make sure you don't choke on your ambition," or something like that. And I was like, wait, did Darth Vader just tell a joke? Like, was that a one-liner from Darth Vader? That didn't really do it for me. I thought that was just a bit lame. I don't know. I thought it was unnecessary, and he didn't come across as quite as intimidating as he could have, because they added that little bit of like forced levity. Anyway, that whole sequence may be one of the weaker ones in the movie, which was a little disappointing because Darth Vader, you want to be like, yeah, Darth frickin' Vader, that's awesome. But they totally make up for it in the end. So we might as well talk about that right now, because right at the very end, as the rebels are desperately trying to take the data disk with the stolen Death Star plans, and they're trying to get it off of the frigate that's getting destroyed and pass it off to Princess Leia on the Tantive 4, and so she can escape with the plans. That scene with the rebel troopers like desperately trying to get this disc away, and then just getting freaking slaughtered by Darth Vader. He just comes in, it's all dark, he turns on his lightsaber, and then he just wrecks the place. That was awesome. That is exactly what I wanted. I wanted Vader to just kick some ass and just totally tear it up, and that is exactly what he does. He is terrifying and intimidating, all the things Darth Vader should be. And in that scene, he absolutely redeems himself in this movie. So that was a fantastic way to end things. Just got you so pumped, and like they kind of had to do that because they had literally just killed all of the main characters, and so it was a bit of a downer. You're like, oh, they just killed all these people that I kind of had grown to like, these characters that are pretty good. It was a little bit, touching and kind of tragic. And that would be a real downer note to end the movie on, but you kind of have to end the movie on that note because that's the story, like the rebels sacrificed a lot to get these plans to Princess Leia, and so that's what happens. But then, yeah, they amp it up with Darth Vader, and then you get that at the very end, Princess Leia gets the plans, and I think that was fine. I think her little cameo there managed to avoid the uncanny valleyness, because obviously they have a young Carrie Fisher, done digitally, presumably. I would imagine that they got now Carrie Fisher, old Carrie Fisher, to mocap that with her face. And then they just digitally skinned it with her young face, and I thought it was quick enough, brief enough that it looked pretty good. So that was good. I thought that was a good ending and a great lead-in directly to Episode 4, A New Hope. Gosh, what else did I want to say? The special effects were excellent throughout, I thought, with the exception of Tarkin's face. But like with the battle at the end and all that sort of stuff, that was really thrilling and well done with some fantastic shots. What else have I got on my list here? It's a little thing, but there were some fantastic mustaches in that movie. Holy cow. And sideburns. There were some great sideburns. And I say that sort of out of jest because, great facial hair is always welcome. But also because they did such a good job of nailing that 70s sci-fi aesthetic in the set design, in the technology that's being used, and in the character designs. They totally went for those 70s mustaches. And because it's true to the first Star Wars movie, and those kinds of details are part of what elevates this film from something that could have been honestly really bad. They could have made a terrible version of this movie. I can imagine it in my head. That would have just been super cringe and not really treated the subject matter or the series with the respect or the attention to detail that it deserves. But they totally nailed it, I think, on all fronts in that respect. The care that was put into this film and making it this amazing prequel, while at the same time being reverent of those original films, is really apparent, which is great for a Star Wars fanboy like me. That's fantastic. So, gosh, I've talked very scattershot and slapdash about a lot of things, but this is getting kind of long. I'm just seeing if there's anything else on my list here that I didn't quite hit. I don't know. There's probably lots of things that you can think of that I haven't mentioned. And of course, you're welcome to bring those to the comments down below, and I'll try and address some of them and chat a bit with you guys as usual. But I guess my conclusion sort of for this is, obviously, I really enjoyed the movie. I'm very positive about it. I'm going to go watch it again a couple times probably. Partly just to pick up all those things because it's so dense. There's a lot going on. And I just want to try and pick up on more of those details, more of those references, more of that world building the second or third time around. But what is so cool about this film, for me, is that what it really captures is that feeling of when I was a kid, when I was like, 7 or 8 or 9 years old, and I was playing Star Wars with my action figures, my little action fleet ships, or with my friends, running around out in the forest, playing Star Wars. This movie feels like that. And it's been a long time since I've felt that about Star Wars. Even The Force Awakens didn't really rekindle that in me. This feels like, because maybe it's because it is a simple story with this ensemble of likable characters, but again, it reminds me of the kinds of roles that my friends and I would take on. You know, I'm the commando, this guy's like the bounty hunter, whatever. We're this kind of motley crew. We're going on this adventure to fight evil. You know, we're just these badass dudes gonna go, and we're gonna go get these plans or take out this base, or, you know, go to this place and do this thing with these kind of set piece moments and these unlikely you know, happenstances. But that's just the kind of way that, you know, kids put together a story like that, and that almost sounds kind of damning. But I don't mean like it's written like it was written by kids. I just mean that it brings back that spirit of adventure and just Star Warsiness. I don't know what else to call it, but that's what it feels like to me. And it really reminds me of just being a kid, playing with those action figures, running around in the forest. And I found that so enjoyable and gratifying. And I thought that was really, really cool. And I hope some of you felt the same about the film. I've kind of stayed away from online reviews before doing this video. But what I have seen, the little bits that I have seen or been told, is that it's a little bit polarizing. Like, some people are like, right on, that was awesome. Some people not so enthusiastic. It's to be expected. It always happens that way. But I would be curious to hear your opinions. Like I've mentioned, please let me know what you felt about it down in the comments. By no means was it a perfect film, but I think it is exactly what it should have been. You know, they pulled it off. They made it what it needed to be, and they did an excellent job of it. And it was very much lived up to my expectations and even exceeded them. It really did exceed my expectations. I went in cautiously optimistic, and I came out saying, awesome. That was friggin' awesome. So, those are my words about Star Wars, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Congratulations if you stuck around to the end here. Thanks very much for watching. By the way, I need some water. But by the way, if you're wondering where this poster came from, they were giving them out. I don't know if that's the case in all preview, or not preview, but opening screenings of the film, because this was the first screening in my town, or my city. And so they were just giving these away as we were leaving the film. And I love this design. It's such a cool, you know, graphic design, with this white Death Star in the background, and then this kind of V shape here with the X-Wings coming down, and then the ensemble cast, and this kind of, you know, classic collage in the middle there. So I'm going to put this up on my wall, not here. I'm going to put it elsewhere. But I really like it, so that was pretty cool. Anyway, I've probably forgotten so much stuff. I don't know, it's all kind of a blur already, but yeah, gonna go watch it again and again. And I hope you really enjoyed it. And if you haven't watched it yet, shame on you for watching through all this, and I ruined the movie for you. But no, seriously, you should go watch it if you haven't seen it. Yeah, so thanks very much for watching. I'll be coming out with another video this weekend, the regularly scheduled Sunday video. It's going to be a Battlefront wander, because that's the mood I'm in. And that'll probably be the end of the Star Wars stuff for a while. And it'll be more relaxing than this, because this wasn't really an ASMR video so much as it was just me being really psyched and wanting to talk to you guys about this awesome Star Wars movie. So thanks again for watching. Really appreciate you coming out every time, watching my stuff. And I look forward to having you back here next time. Bye for now.